Pedro was an 11-year-old boy who had just moved to a new school. He was friendly and liked to meet new people. At first, he was excited about the idea of making new friends. However, he soon realized that some classmates treated him differently. Two boys in the class, Tiago and Gustavo, always tried to tease him during recess. They made jokes about Pedro's hair and his backpack, trying to make him uncomfortable. But Pedro didn't let it bother him. He knew that, sometimes, people were cruel for no reason. Instead of feeling sad, Pedro decided he needed to take a stand. He knew he could defend himself, and he was determined not to be intimidated by anyone. At home, Pedro thought about what was happening at school. He knew that ignoring bullies didn't always solve the problem. He remembered the stories his grandfather used to tell about school in the old days. In those days, his grandfather would say, kids learned to stand up for themselves and didn't let others walk all over them. Pedro decided he would do the same. He didn't want to fight, but he wanted Tiago and Gustavo to understand that he wasn't an easy target. The next day, when Tiago made another joke about his backpack, Pedro turned around, looked him in the eyes, and calmly replied, "Why do you always have to talk about me? Don't you have anything better to do?" His voice was firm but not aggressive. Tiago was surprised by the response. He didn't expect Pedro to speak so directly. Gustavo, who was standing beside him, laughed a little awkwardly. Pedro realized he had caught the whole class's attention. Pedro knew this was just the beginning. After facing Tiago and Gustavo, he realized he needed to be consistent. Over the next few days, Pedro continued to maintain his firm stance. When the two tried to provoke him again, he didn't waver. Instead of feeling intimidated, he challenged their teasing with direct questions. "Why do you care so much about what I do? Or do you do this because you don't have anything better to show about yourself?" These responses started to make Tiago and Gustavo uncomfortable. Gradually, other classmates began to notice Pedro's attitude. Instead of laughing along with the bullies, they started to support Pedro. Some friends even came up to him and said they admired his courage. Pedro was showing everyone that standing up for oneself didn't mean being aggressive but rather having confidence and poise. Pedro's attitude was changing the school's dynamic. Before, many would stay quiet or try to hide to avoid being bullied. But seeing Pedro stand up for himself in a smart and confident way, some students began to follow his example. They no longer reacted with fear or silence. Instead, they learned to assert themselves. Tiago and Gustavo, realizing that their old strategy was no longer working, began to back off. They noticed that their behavior was no longer tolerated as before and that they were losing the power they thought they had. The classroom, once dominated by teasing and laughter at others' expense, began to become a more respectful and welcoming environment. Pedro felt that his effort was making a difference. And the best part, he was not alone. Over time, Pedro realized that his positive and courageous behavior was starting to influence other students. He decided he wanted to help more kids understand that they didn't have to be victims of bullying. During recess, he began talking to some classmates who also suffered from teasing. "You don't have to hide or accept what they say," Pedro told a classmate named Ana, who was often the target of jokes for being shyer. The best way to stop it is to show that you won't be intimidated and that you have your own value. Anna, who had always found it hard to deal with other people's comments, began to be inspired by Pedro's confidence. With his support and that of other classmates, she began to stand up more, making it clear she wouldn't tolerate the teasing anymore. Soon, other students began to realize that, together, they could create a healthier environment at school. Pedro's attitude and his initiative to encourage others to stand up for themselves began to change the school environment. The students who used to bully realized that their words no longer had the same effect. Gradually, the teasing decreased, and a climate of respect began to grow. Pedro suggested that the school create a group where students could talk about their feelings and learn to respect each other. The idea was well received by the administration, and soon the group was formed. Many students joined, some to share their experiences, others to better understand how to support their peers. The group became a safe space for everyone. Pedro and Anna, who had now become close friends, led the discussions, always reinforcing the importance of standing up for oneself with respect, without aggression, and supporting those in need. The result was a school where everyone felt more united and protected, knowing they could count on one another. Pedro learned that sometimes it takes courage to face what scares us, but it's also important to support those around us. He discovered that together, everyone could create a place where each person could be themselves without fear of being judged or bullied. And so, what started as a personal challenge turned into a life lesson for Pedro and many others. They learned that true power lies in standing up for oneself, supporting each other, and building an environment of respect and unity. Thank you for listening to this impactful story. Remember, you have the power to decide how to react to challenges in your life. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories and English learning tips. We'll see you in the next video.